It's been a little snowy in Glasgow recently, so I've needed a project to keep these busy hands, well, busy. I sent the cute thief out on a token-like quest to find something truly unique, and he's just returned. With my Onza from a couple of weeks ago. This is a unique bike, but it's not exactly new anymore. But what is new is this digital scale, so I can see exactly how much this tank of a bike weighs. 11.5 kilos, or 25 pounds for you Americans. It's actually lighter than I thought, and that's with the extra dirt. But that said, it's still heavy for a trials bike. I mentioned at the end of the build video that I'd like to see how light I could get this because I really do like how it rides. But to shed some serious weight, I want to cut and drill the frame, and I just can't bring myself to do that with this one-off prototype. I really think I should leave this frame as is. Fortunately, the cute thief was just messing with me, and he has provided a bog standard donor frame that I won't feel guilty about modifying. This production model seems exactly the same as my prototype, with the only difference being the position of the brake mounts. I wonder if it weighs the same. It's actually a few grams heavier, but I suspect that could be down to the extra paint this has. I will remove the paint, but first I'll do some drilling, and there's plenty of places for me to go nuts. Okay, first things first, who's got time for gear cable mounts? Not me, that's who. And on a frame with tubes as thick as these, I can simply flex them off with pliers. I definitely wouldn't recommend this on a steel frame or one with lighter tubing though. But is this how a dentist feels when pulling teeth? That's actually my first time pulling a bike's teeth. These mounts are usually soldered on, so I figured it could come off with some persuasion. And turns out I was right. No dentist visit is complete without the sound of a drill, so to neaten things up, I use my old faithful Dremel. I then smooth it off with some hand file action. But gear mounts are child's play. Let's move things up a notch and take a chunk out of the head tube. This seems big enough, but you know what they say, bigger is better. Although it turns out bigger isn't always better after all. I made it through one side, but the other is actually cutting down inside of the head tube, so I stop here and pry the piece out instead. The lack of neatness with the hole saw doesn't really matter, as I'm not going to stop there. There's still weight to be saved, so I use my Dremel to open up the hole as big as I dare. If you're new to trials, this may look extremely destructive, but before you throw your boots at the unsubscribe button, go and Google trials bike images and you'll see nearly all seatless style bikes like this have head tube cutouts as standard, and I've never seen one fail. So I'm confident I'm not weakening the frame at all by doing this. But once done, this is how it looks. And no, I've not cut it wonky. The holes at the back are actually off centre. And speaking of, they're a little small, aren't they? And why does that phrase sound so familiar? With the big hole made, I now have easy access to remove as much from the back as possible. You can really see how thick the walls are, so this is a decent place to go nuts. Once done, this is how it looks. I removed as much as possible without affecting the weld zones, plus I added some extra holes for good measure. I'm not done yet though, far from it. Next up to face the wrath of my drill is the chainstay yoke. This is a massive chunk of metal, which I'm going to make slightly less massive. Don't think I've ever seen a yoke this chunky before. The hole saw doesn't leave the neatest finish, so I'll run the Dremel around it to get it looking nicer later. A bit like the head tube, I'm not stopping here. Next up, I drill through the back door. This is literally the thickest bit of metal on the frame though, so this took some effort. But I got there in the end. And it's not just the back door, the bottom door also gets some drilling action, and even the cat flaps get taken care of. Moving up to the hog logo, which is actually a porcupine, thanks to the folks in the comment section of the build video for clearing that up. This is a massive 8mm plate, which is completely overkill. Let's fix that. Well, that took bloody ages. I'd have liked to have taken the midsection all the way back to the tubing, getting rid of the unneeded welds, but to be honest with you, I ran out of patience. This was a slog. No time to rest though. These braces, struts, seat tubes, whatever you call them, are also pretty overkill, and I think could survive a few holes each. That'll do, pig. That'll do. Once both sides were done, it looks like this. I'm happy with how it went, and it does feel noticeably lighter. It doesn't feel any flexier either, but the proof will be in the riding. Now the drilling's done, I'm going to get the frame bead blasted to remove the paint, but also to blend together any rough edges I might have left, and to give a good finish for any coatings I might want to add. Plus, it might blast some material off and make it even lighter. Also, these holes I made will make it super easy to remove any blast material that gets in the frame. Ideal. Right, a few days have passed and I got the frame back from blasting, and it looks awesome. It looks like some kind of industrial equipment with all these shapes and holes. And speaking of holes, I did add a few cheeky small ones off camera. Drilling is addictive. But the biggest addition you've not seen yet is a port for internally routing the rear brake. Controversial, I know, but one thing I noticed when picking up a trials bike by the top tube is the brake cable. And as someone who can be particular about textures, it annoyed me that it broke up the nice circle of the tubing. Petty, I know, and I may end up regretting it when it comes to fitting the rear brake, but I wanted to at least try it. Now, you've all been very patient so far. I bet you're all gagging to know how much weight I saved. I know I am. So there we have it, a full day's drilling, grinding, filing and sanding, plus a trip to get it blasted, and I saved 250 grams. That's actually pretty decent. The last time I modded a frame, I saved 158 grams, but to be honest, that frame started out lighter than this frame has ended up, so despite the bigger saving, this frame is still a tank. But that's fine, I'm not out to build the world's lightest bike, just a lighter version of my Rex. And a 1/4 kilo on the frame is a pretty good start. Now, before I do anything further, a good thing to do is level the brake mounts with a file. This means if I end up using washerless clamps, the brakes should sit straighter and the pads should hit flatter. In theory, the mounts should already be pretty flat, but it's always good to make sure. Now, as desperate as I am to get this video moving, I can't leave it raw. This would be the lightest option, but the finish is too raw. I like bright bikes, and I've had an idea to make it really pop. And that was to gild the frame with gold leaf. Okay, it's not real gold. YouTube doesn't pay me well enough for that, but fake gold is cheap, and it looks mostly the same. I also got some fake red, and as we all know, red is fastest. But sadly, neither the fake gold or fake red worked particularly well on some test samples. Plus, this bike isn't for going fast, it's for showing off. And if I want to be showy, I have just the thing. Some disco vinyl wrap. Now, I've never wrapped a frame before. Actually, I've never wrapped anything before, so I have no idea if this will work or not. So, I'll be right back with an update. Well, colour me surprised. And if you know where that quote's from, then I'm impressed. It actually worked. I won't lie though, that was seriously tedious. This wrap didn't like too much heat or too much stretch, and it took an entire day to do. But I'm more than happy with the results. It might look a little bland now, but wait till I change the lighting. Ben at Tire Bike said I should name this the Disco Rex. and I think that's a perfect name. But as cool as it looks, don't look too closely, otherwise you'll see all the imperfections. It's by far a perfect wrap, but for my needs, it will do just fine. My only worry is riding this in bright sunlight and blinding people. I'm sure that's against YouTube's guidelines. They're pretty strict these days. They might even flag this frame as being adult content, as it's some pretty good bike pop. Now, if you think I stopped at the frame, you'd be dead. Wrong. I also wrapped the rims. Thankfully, these were a lot easier than the frame. There are some downsides to wrapping, aside from the time it took and how red raw my fingers got from all pressing the vinyl into nooks and crannies. It's a little delicate and will scratch or deform if abused. Plus, it obviously adds some weight. I foolishly forgot to weigh it after wrapping, so I'll just tell myself it added 4 grams. Okay, sorry folks, I know you want to see the bike built, but to avoid this being a 40-minute long video, I'm going to do the build as a part 2. Oh, the suspense. It'll be worth the wait. To make sure you don't miss it, do me subscribe, and I'll see you then. Thanks so much. Take care now. Bye-bye.